Derrick Lewis, a heavyweight fighter in the UFC known as the Black Beast, has a history with law enforcement that predates his professional fighting career. Shortly after graduating from high school, Lewis was charged with aggravated assault and received probation. 2 years later, while on a football scholarship at Kilgore College in Texas, he violated that probation and was sentenced to 5 years in prison, of which he served 3.5. More recently, in October 2023, less than 2 weeks before a scheduled main event fight in Brazil, Lewis was arrested in his hometown of Houston, Texas. According to court records from Harris County, he was charged with misdemeanor reckless driving. Authorities alleged that Lewis was driving a red Lamborghini at 136 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. The report also stated that he made unsafe lane changes at a time when school buses were on the road. Lewis was arrested and released the same day on a $100 personal recognizance bond. His court date was scheduled for December 27, 2023. Number 7. Chuck Liddell. In the early morning hours of October 11, 2021, deputies from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department responded to a call regarding a family disturbance at the Hidden Hills, California home of UFC Hall of Famer Chuck Liddell. Upon arrival, officers determined that a physical altercation had occurred between the 51-year-old Liddell and his wife, Heidi. Liddell was arrested on a misdemeanor charge of domestic battery and booked at the Lost Hills Sheriff's Station. His bail was set at $20,000 and he was released later that day. Shortly after his release, Liddell issued a public statement in which he claimed that he was the victim of the incident. He stated that he had sustained bruises and lacerations and that deputies had informed him his wife would be the one arrested. Liddell claimed he volunteered to go in her place to shield a family mental health issue from the public purview. On October 18, 2021, the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office announced that it would not be filing charges against either Chuck or Heidi Liddell. The decision was based on a lack of sufficient evidence in what was deemed a cross-complaint, where both parties alleged the other was the aggressor. The district attorney's notes mentioned that Heidi Liddell had no visible injuries while her husband had a slight red mark on his cheek and chest. Days after the arrest, Chuck Liddell filed for divorce. Number 6. Anthony Johnson. The late Anthony "Rumble" Johnson, a former UFC light heavyweight title challenger, had a documented history of domestic violence allegations. In 2010, he was convicted of a 2009 domestic battery charge after pleading no contest. He was sentenced to 3 years of probation, community service, and counseling. In September 2014, the UFC suspended Johnson after the mother of his 2 children filed a police report alleging he had struck her and knocked out 2 of her teeth. In 2012, she also alleged that she was receiving threats from Johnson's friends. The UFC hired a third-party law firm to investigate, and in November 2014, the promotion lifted his suspension after the civil case against him was dismissed. On May 5, 2019, Johnson was arrested again in Boca Raton, Florida, on a domestic battery charge. His girlfriend at the time called 911, alleging that during an argument, Johnson had become angry and forcefully picked her up to carry her into another room, causing her to fear for her safety. The case was ultimately dismissed after Johnson reached an agreement with prosecutors that required him to complete an anger management course. Number 5. Thiago Silva. On the evening of February 6, 2014, UFC light heavyweight Thiago Silva drove to the Pablo Popovich Mixed Martial Arts Academy in Oakland Park, Florida. His estranged wife, Asa, was at the gym where her new partner, Pablo Popovich, was the owner and instructor. According to the police report, Thaisa approached the vehicle when Silva pointed a Glock firearm at her and threatened to enter the gym and start shooting everyone unless Popovich came outside. After Popovich emerged, Silva threatened both of them before driving away. Police tracked Silva to his home where he barricaded himself inside. The Broward Sheriff's Office deployed a SWAT team, and after a 4-hour standoff, Silva surrendered and was taken into custody after being subdued with a stun gun. The UFC terminated his contract the following day. In September 2014, all charges against him were dropped after prosecutors determined that his estranged wife was uncooperative and had likely moved out of the country. The UFC then re-signed Silva but terminated his contract again just 2 weeks later after new video and audio evidence was publicly released by his wife. Number 4. Tony Ferguson. In the early morning hours of May 7, 2023, former interim UFC lightweight champion Tony Ferguson was arrested in Hollywood, California on suspicion of driving under the influence. At approximately 2 a.m., Ferguson's pickup truck crashed into at least 2 parked cars near Sunset Boulevard before flipping onto its side. Ferguson and a passenger had to be removed from the overturned vehicle. but no serious injuries were reported. According to police who responded to the scene, Ferguson was very uncooperative and refused to take a field sobriety test or a breathalyzer. Officers noted that he smelled of alcohol and had bloodshot eyes. He was arrested and booked into county jail on a misdemeanor DUI charge. He was later released on his own recognizance and pleaded not guilty to the charge. As of the latest reports, the case was still pending in the court system. Number 3. Cain Velasquez. On February 28, 2022, former two-time UFC heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez was involved in an 11-mile high-speed car chase through Morgan Hill and San Jose, California. His target was a man named Harry Goularte, who was in a truck with his mother and stepfather. Goularte had been arrested less than a week earlier, accused of molesting Velasquez's 4-year-old son, but had been released from custody without bail. During the case, Velasquez rammed the truck and fired a .40 caliber handgun multiple times. Goularte was not hit, but his stepfather, who was driving, was struck in the arm and flank. The incident took place as the vehicles drove past a school that was dismissing for the day. Velasquez was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, including attempted murder. He was initially denied bail, with the judge citing the extreme risk his actions posed to the public. Velasquez eventually pleaded no contest to the charges. On March 24, 2025, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with credit for time already served. He is expected to be eligible for release in February 2027. Today's topic was requested by Nikki123BXD, Charlie Carr 9320, and Jono 30197. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. BJ Penn.
What kind of harassment? How can I be under arrest for harassment? This is my house. I just went to go grab the mail.
So I'll explain more to you. You can film if you want. We just have to.
It's not that I want to, I have to. This is kind of weird.
Can you just step on the side? Thank you.
I'm not sure what he did. What did he do? What did he do? That's my question.
UFC Hall of Famer and former 2-division champion BJ Penn has had numerous run-ins with the law, including a 2015 assault arrest and multiple DUI investigations. His legal issues escalated dramatically in May 2025 when he was arrested 3 times in 6 days in Hilo, Hawaii, for incidents involving his 79-year-old mother, Lorraine Shin. The first arrest occurred on May 25th when he was charged with offensive physical contact after allegedly stealing his mother's mail, shining a high-powered flashlight in her eyes and shoving her against a vehicle. After being released on bail, he was arrested again the next day for violating a 48-hour stay-away order by returning to her home. A third arrest followed on May 30th after he missed a court date. The situation was complicated by his family's claims that Penn is suffering from a rare mental disorder known as Capras delusional syndrome, in which a person believes a close family member has been replaced by an identical-looking imposter. Penn has publicly claimed that his parents were murdered and replaced by imposters who are stealing his family's assets. Following the arrests, his mother obtained a temporary restraining order against him. As of June 2025, Penn had been arrested a 4th time for violating the restraining order, and his legal cases were still ongoing. Number 1. Jon Jones. Jon Jones, the UFC heavyweight champion and one of the most dominant fighters in the sport's history, has a long and well-documented history of legal troubles. His record includes a 2012 DUI conviction after crashing his Bentley into a utility pole, and multiple failed drug tests that resulted in suspensions and the stripping of his titles. One of his most serious incidents occurred in April 2015 when he was involved in a felony hit-and-run accident in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Jones ran a red light and crashed his rental car into a vehicle driven by a pregnant woman, breaking her arm. He fled the scene on foot, only to return moments later to grab a handful of cash from his car before fleeing again. For this, he pleaded guilty to leaving the scene of an accident and was sentenced to 18 months of supervised probation. On September 24, 2021, just hours after his fight with Alexander Gustafsson was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, Jones was arrested again in Las Vegas. He was charged with misdemeanor battery, domestic violence, and felony injuring or tampering with a vehicle. The arrest followed a 911 call from a Caesars Palace security guard who reported that Jones's fiancée was bleeding from her nose and mouth. The felony charge was added after Jones, during his arrest, smashed his head into the hood of a police patrol car, causing significant damage. The domestic violence charge was ultimately dropped, and Jones pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge of destroying property. He was ordered to pay restitution and attend anger management classes. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get in the cage against Chuck Liddell or have to sprint full speed into a brick wall? Let us know in the comments section below.